Hey folks, I'm Jack Watson, UI UX designer, illustrator, animator, and donut connoisseur, and I'll be your host for another Illustrator Marketing Challenge. Today we'll be working on creating some fancy gift tags and going over some print terminology. Before we get started, check below this video in the description. We've got a bunch of links there, including links to our Illustrator Discord, and to download your resources to create along with us. Once you open up your Illustrator file, you'll see a bunch of artboards I have set up for you with guides on them. I've put together 3 artboards for you today, one for each set of gift tag styles. These are all standard gift tags. I've got circles, rectangles, and a hang tag. Normally, we can use Illustrator's bleed settings in a document setup bleed and the artboard as our trim. But since we're working with sticker sheets, you need to make your own guides for them. The guides I'm referring to here are these blue lines, and they don't print with your file. They're only here for your reference. I've included these guides on each artboard for you, a bleed, a safe area, and a trim line. And at the top here, I've got a key to specify what each of these is, which is using these dashed lines if you need to kind of reference. But to go through what each of those terms means here, the bleed is going to be the farthest out, sort of widest dashed line here, and that's going to be what you use to put any artwork that you want to print from edge to edge. So if we draw out a circle here really quickly and we add a fill color to it, if we wanted this to print black all the way to the edge, we'd want to drag it out to that bleed. The next line in, the solid line, is going to be our trim line. So that's where our design is going to get cut by the printer. So when we've got our bleed all the way to the edge, it's going to cut inside of that bleed. That ensures that we get no white on the edges when we print. The third line that we've got here is going to be the smallest dashed line, and that is just our safe zone. So anything that we want to keep from getting cut off or accidentally getting too close to the edge where it might become more difficult to read, we're going to want to keep it inside of that safe zone. So I think it's like 0.15 inches away from the trim line here. So we're working with small sizes today with these gift tags. So I created these guides just by using the regular shape tools, in this case the circle tool. You can use any shape tools, lines, or the pen tool to create any kind of shape you want. And then once you kind of got a funky thing going on, you can go up to View, go to Guides, and hit Make Guides, and it's going to make anything that you create into a guide for you. That won't print with your file, just kind of there for your reference, like I said. The other thing to note is that today we are working in CMYK. Again, CMYK is the color space for print, color gamut for print. It does have a different range in CMYK. So if we go in here and we drag to a really bright and saturated green, we're going to get an auto gamut warning. We're just going to want to make sure that we either let Illustrator correct that by clicking on that square there or dragging on our own to a less saturated color, and that's going to get rid of that warning for you. The idea here is that if you want to get these printed or print them yourselves at home, we want to make sure that we eliminate that out of gamut warning so that the color you see on your screen is the same as the color that you get, or close to what you get when you print out. If there's an out of gamut warning, it might not be the same. Alright, so let's get into it. I'm going to start by creating a color palette today. I'm going to go over to my rectangle tool, holding down Shift here. I'm going to zoom in so we can actually see a little bit better. I'm just going to hold down Shift and drag out kind of a perfect square. And then we're going to go over to our swatches panel, and I'm just going to click to bring my stroke to the front and hit None. Rob in our live chat is very excited about CMYK. If you're joining here on Behance and or on the Adobe Live YouTube channel, we've got a live chat. You can join, ask questions, and chat with the community. Alright, so I'm going to double click to bring up my color picker, and I'm just going to start by picking some colors. We do have a question in the chat along the lines of CMYK. As long as you don't have the warning sign, your colors will print fine for CMYK. Yes, they should. I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of variance between the screen and what prints, depending on your printer and the inks that you're working with. But it should fix any major issues. It should be, it should be close. Certainly closer than if you were to drag all the way out here. I mean, this neon green is not something that you can really create using ink. It's just kind of out of the CMYK gamut. So if we bring it back in, that's going to get your colors closer to the colors that we've got available in the gamut. So, okay, we're not going to pick lime green though. We're going to double click and we're going to choose we want to be careful today. Because we're working for print, one of the things I'm going to suggest is that you keep your backgrounds light, and that's because it's easier for people to write on your gift tags if the background's a light color. If you use a really dark color, people would have to use either like a gel or a paint pen to write on top of them. So if you want to make these really easy to use, I would recommend using a light color. So I'm just going to start by dragging out a lighter green. We'll go with something like a cooler color here. I'm just going to hit OK. We can use that as a background color. Holding down Option and Shift and clicking and dragging, I know it's a lot of steps, Alt or Option and Shift and dragging will make a copy. You can also just do Command C and Command F to copy and paste in front if that's easier and drag it over. We'll pick some additional colors. I like to have a range of values. Values are lights and darks, so I'm going to go over here, and now I've got a light, I'm going to pick a dark color. So I'm going to double click, and then we're just going to go with a darker green. So we've got a darker green, a lighter green, and then you guessed it, I'm going to keep this monochromatic for the beginning here, and we're going to pick a kind of like mid-tone green, making sure that we're not getting that out of gamut warning. Actually bring it up a little bit brighter. Okay, so now we've got a set of kind of like monotone greens here. I'm just going to select all of these, holding down Option and Shift and dragging. I can make another set, and then we'll pick another color combination. This time I'll start with an off-white going down. If you need help picking colors, I've got a link to Adobe Color that you can go and visit, and that can help you pick some colors. For example, we might want to go here with a complementary pair. So I've got like a yellow. I'm going to go with a purple to kind of pair with that. Kind of a dark purple. Let's lighten it up a little bit. Okay, and then over here I mentioned that gold and purple are complementary colors, so our accent is also going to be a gold. So we're going to go with a nice gold accent here. Bringing it down into the gold values. Let's go a little bit darker. There we go. And then we can make one more set here, holding an Option and Shift. This time I'll go with a classic combination. I'll go here and I'll grab my green from the top to grab my dark green again. I'll go up here and grab this green. Maybe we want to have like a red accent to get like a nice red and green kind of color combination. I might want to adjust these colors by making them a little bit warmer instead of being cooler greens. I think that'll pair better with our kind of Christmas colors. All right. That's good enough. I could sit here and pick colors all day, and I'm not going to. Once you've got a color palette sorted out, you can drag to select all of these, and there's a really easy way to add these to your swatches. I prefer working with swatches because I can very easily select those colors, and I can also work with this color panel up here to create tints. So if I click on this folder, I can add this as a color group, and to work with things as tints, I want to make sure that this convert process to global is checked. What that means, it's going to take your, a process swatch isn't going to, you'll see, is anything like this that doesn't have a little triangle in the corner. A global swatch has a little triangle in the corner, so we're going to hit OK. You can see that's how you can identify it. And what we can do with those is if we select one, we can have this little tint slider that lets us adjust the lightness and darkness, how much of that color gets applied. I just find it a really handy way to work. So, all right, so let's go over now to Adobe Fonts. We need to pick some festive fonts really quickly. I'm going to go over to all fonts, and you can browse by all of these different tags and classifications. We've got a really easy one we can pick today, which is going to be holidays. And when I'm browsing through here, I want to pick some fonts that have some variety and also fit the mood that I'm looking for. So these are like DIY car gift tags. So we want something that's kind of handmade. You can see here, this has even got like some gift tags in the image. I'll just pick some. I really like this one. I think this is kind of fun. So I'm just going to go here and we'll activate this one. And we can pick some fonts when we get in there and decide what we kind of want to work with. I'm going to go with this one up here. I'm going to go into this family. And this one is really cool because you can see down here, it's got lots of different options for you to choose from. It's got script fonts. It's got like this funky sans serif font. This one's really cool. I'm going to just activate that. And now that I've got these activated, they're just going to activate in Illustrator and be ready for me to use. So we've got our colors, we've got our fonts. Now it's time to start with our circle tag. So I've got this one here all ready for us. I'm going to go over and select a circle because we want to match that shape. And I've got smart guides on today. You can turn those on under view smart guides, and we're going to just line it up using smart guides, those little pink indicators. Once we're at the center here, we're going to hold down Shift. Shift lets you constrain that shape, but if you hold down Shift and Alt, it's going to let you scale from the center, and that's going to make it really easy for us to create a shape that reaches all the way out to our bleed. Alright, I don't want a dark color like we discussed, so we're going to pick sort of a lighter green for that center there. Now we've got our background, let's add our type for our design. So we need to have a to and a from line, so I'm going to click to select my type tool and just click to create some point text. I'm going to type out to with a colon there. I'm going to do something that's going to help us out. We're going to keep this design all centered today, so I'm going to go up to the paragraph settings and I'm going to choose center align. That's going to make it easier as we're changing our text around to make sure that our second line aligns with our first. I'm going to go up to character and I'm going to find one of my fonts. I know one of them is Scrapbooker. So let's see, let's pick one of these. I'll start with maybe the sans serif here. And then we'll just scale it up a little bit and we'll add it over our design. There we go. I can change the color of this. We'll go with like a little lighter green. I'm actually going to lighten this tint on this background a little bit because it's a little bit too strong for me. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is some fonts have alternate characters that you can select from. So if you highlight your text here, you can see that sometimes we get these little indicators, this little box down here that lets you get like a fancier little character there. So I like that too a little bit better. We're going to go with that. Next we need to draw on our right on line. So I'm going to click and drag holding down Shift with the line tool to create a nice line that we can write on. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select the stroke to bring it to the front and pick my darker green. That'll make it really easy for people to see where they need to write their line on. Alright, so now I've got our to line, we need to make our from. I'm just going to drag this down a little bit, make some space, holding down Shift to select both my text and my line, and then I'm just going to hold down Alt and Shift to drag straight down to add a second line. Now when I double click to edit my text to type out from, I've already got it centered, so I don't need to make any adjustments or move things around. Now I can select my letters, and maybe we want to add an alternate character for some of these letters here. You don't want to go too crazy or it starts to get a little bit over the top, but just a little bit, make it a little bit fancier, you know? There is one other thing we can do with the align tools. If we select our text and we hold down Shift and select all of our lines and text, up here at the alignment options in the control bar, or you can get to them by going to Window and Align. I'm going to use this. It's the vertical distribute center, and when I do that, it's going to space everything out with equal space in between. So it's a really fast way to align your text. Alright, so let's make this fancy. I want to add some fancy flourishes onto this. I'm just going to grab my ellipse tool, holding down Shift to draw out a circle, switching my stroke and fill, so I've got a stroke applied. I'm going to switch to my direct selection tool, and I'm just going to drag this point out a little bit to the right. Now I can go up here with that selected in my control bar, and I can convert that point if I want to. So we're going to convert it to a corner point this time. You can convert it back to a round anchor point, smooth, or corner just by tapping those icons. I'm going to zoom in and now switch to my pen tool, and with my pen tool with a shape already created, I can just tap to add some points. So I'm going to tap to add a point here, and then I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to add another point kind of in the middle there. Once I add that second point, I'm just going to delete that. So now we've got a little bit of an opening there. The next step is going to be to hit Command C and Command F to make a copy of that. I'm going to use my selection tool, hovering over to get that rotate, holding down Shift, rotate it 180 degrees, slide it on over until those 2 points meet with Smart Guides, drag to select everything, and hit Command J to group. So now we've got sort of this fancy flourish design that we can kind of put below. But if we added something below, we also need to add something to the top. So this time, we started out making a flourish with simple shapes. I'm going to make a flourish using the curvature pen tool. Now, The curvature pen tool does take a little bit of practice to get used to. The idea is you just want to move your points in the direction that you want your curves to go. So starting here, I'm going to tap to make a point, and I'm going to tap to make another point. And nothing's happening yet, right? It just looks like a straight line. But as we drag up to create a third point, you're going to see that Illustrator is going to start to indicate with that red line the curve that we're going to be creating. So when I tap to add another point, it's then going to curve. So I'm just moving my mouse and adding points in the direction that I want that line to go. And you're going to drag around, and it takes some practice. It's not something that you're going to get right away. We want to make this kind of like looping shape here, but we can go back through and make some adjustments with the curvature pen tool still active. So I've still got my curvature pen tool. I can click on these little nodes, and as I do that, it's going to kind of adjust my shape to get something that kind of looks a little bit better. So I can just kind of go through here and clean up my placement after the fact and get something that I like. That looks pretty good. You can keep playing around with it, but we're going to do one more way to make a flourish, which is our friend, the spiral tool. So when I drag out the spiral tool here under the line tool, up and down arrows are going to add more spirals, and then command and dragging is going to change the spacing. So once you're happy with the way that your spiral kind of looks, you can switch to shift, and holding down shift is going to constrain your shape so it's nice and straight and balanced. I'm just going to release, and then we can kind of place these as we see fit on our design. We can maybe like rotate and add a little flourish down here at the bottom where these lines connect. We can scale it down, just kind of using my selection tool to manipulate these and move them into place. I'll do the same thing up here. We'll add another one, maybe fewer points, maybe make it a little bit larger or something, and then we'll just kind of put it over here. We'll kind of add that second kind of loop design. It's really up to you how you want this to look. I just would experiment with the tool and see what you can come up with. We'll add another one down here. So we've got a bunch of stuff. You'll notice that I'm just focusing on the left side of the design for now, because what I'm going to do here in a minute is I'm going to select all of these, kind of get it close to the center, and then I'm going to select my opposite spiral down here. And we're going to go up to Object, Transform, and Reflect. And when we do that, it's going to flip based on which axis you choose. In this case, we want to flip it vertically. And instead of hitting OK, we're going to get Copy, and that's going to make a copy of our set. We're just going to drag this along, holding down Shift to keep everything constrained. And now we've got a nice kind of flourishy design on our gift tag here. We can kind of move this by just selecting everything, holding down Shift until we're kind of happy with the placement of everything. That looks good to me. And I do want to recall that we talked about making sure that we have something that is easy for people to write on with just a standard pen. So I'm going to select that background again, hit Command C and Command F to copy and paste in front, holding down Shift and Alt to drag to the center here. We can just add a white fill by clicking on our fill here and adding a white fill, and that ensures that these to and from lines have good contrast for people to write on. I also think that this kind of looks like a little bit of a wreath design, which is kind of fun and works with our theme, right? Alright, so you can keep going with that and make yours as festive as you want. I am going to flip over to our rectangle design now. We're going to make something a little bit more fun. The last design was a little formal, so this one will be a little bit more fun. So I'm going to switch over to my rectangle tool, and again, I'm going to follow those bleed lines, those like larger dashed lines here. I'm going to switch my fill and strokes. We've got a fill forward, and then just to get started, I'm going to pick a lighter color. We'll go with the off-white this time. I'm just going to drag a shape out to fill my space. So I've got a shape that fills my bleed, right? That's going to be our starting point. And this time, for our write-on lines, we're actually going to use, we're going to switch back to the line tool. We're going to use a different method to create our lines. So I'm going to hold down Shift to drag out a write-on line here. I'm going to change this fill and stroke, select the stroke forward, and apply a red color. Now we've got our line at the top, and this one's got, I'm just holding down Shift to scale this a little bit more. This one's got a little bit more space on it, so I could go in here and copy and paste and like make each of these lines, but the easier way to do it is to copy the first line and drag it down to where you want to have the bottom line. And then you can hold Shift to select both of our lines, and we can go up to Object, Blend, and Make. And at first, it's going to make a blend that is way too crazy, We can fix that by going to Object, Blend, we can go to Blend Options. And by default, it's going to be set to smooth color. Illustrator is trying to make a smooth transition, but in this case, we want to have specified steps. And you can see it's set up to 77. I'm just going to bring it down to a more reasonable 10. And you can just use your up and down arrows to kind of get to the point where you are happy with the number of lines that you've got. I think 2 is going to be good for the space on this card, so I'm just going to hit OK. And everything is going to be spaced out for you. You don't have to worry about aligning anything. Speaking of, we're going to add some text to this. So I'm going to grab my type tool again. I'm going to type out 2, just like we did last time. But this time, I'm going to go up here, and our text is going to be right aligned with our lines, so we need to go up here and change our paragraph alignment to be right instead. Up here in the character panel, I'm going to switch to another one of my fonts. I really badly want to use the Scrapbooker Tuscan here, so I'm going to switch to that one. Change this fill color to maybe purple, love it, and then we'll bring it down and align it with our line there. I can just hold down Option and Shift to drag a second line out, and then I will double click in here, and as we type out from, you can see that everything is going to remain aligned to each other in that space. Alright, this is looking pretty good, but I'm noticing already that I'm going to have this weird negative space over here, and so we can kind of fill something in this negative space, just like we did with our circle design. So over here, we've got this kind of wreath thing going on. I'm going to keep that kind of theme. I'm going to grab my pen tool this time instead of my curvature pen, and I'm going to select my green, and I'm going to switch that so that we have our green stroke again. And just like before with the curvature pen tool, how we were kind of clicking and indicating in the direction that we wanted our line to go, the pen tool is going to work similarly. So if we tap to add our first point, but don't let go, and we start to drag, we're going to get these anchor handles. And you just want to drag the anchor handle in the direction that you want your line to go. So we're going to drag it out, and the longer you make that line, the more it's going to curve your line. So I'm going to drag it out, and then when I tap another line, you can see that it's already kind of curved my line for me. So I don't have to like create a second line here. We can adjust using the direct selection tool. I can move it over a little bit, and then I can drag these anchor handles out after the fact to kind of further adjust my curve. Okay, so now we've got a nice path here, kind of leading from our to our from. But let's make it look fancy, right? I'm going to go up here and grab my rectangle tool again, and we're going to make a really quick leaf so we can have a similar theme, right? Holding down Shift, I'll drag out a square here using our rectangle tool, and I'm going to switch to the direct selection tool, and with the direct selection tool I can select these individual points. I'm going to select opposite corners, so the upper left and the bottom right, and with the live corners, these little circles here, I'm just going to drag them all the way in until we get a nice leaf shape, and then we can switch our fill and stroke and we have a leaf. Once we've got that, we can just kind of add it to our design using our scale and rotate with the selection tool to just kind of place these anywhere that we want to on our line here to create a nice like little, I don't know, little festive branch or something, right? There we go, that looks pretty good. And then to finish this like illustration out, I'm going to add some purple berries. Maybe they're like purple holly berry. You could do red for holly berries, or like maybe these are like weird little sugar plums. I don't know. I'm going to pick the ellipse tool, holding down Shift. I'll drag out some little circles here to fill those gaps in. And it also adds our purple from our text to kind of further incorporate that color. Alright, there we go. That is looking pretty good. You can continue to work on this. You could add a little bordered edge to this. You could add some more little accents, but I think that this is looking pretty good. I'm now ready to kind of export this to save for print. So if you wanted to save this out to print, you're going to want to go to File, Save As, and you're going to want to choose Adobe PDF. That's going to be the best format if you wanted to save this out to send to a printer or to print it out. But for today, we're going to be exporting these out for the Discord. So in order to do that, we're going to go to File, Export, and we're going to choose Export for Screens. When you do that, you're going to get all of your artboards. I would recommend that you fill all of your artboards out instead of me. I've only got these 2 started. We've also got, if we go over here, a hang tag if you wanted to make kind of like a hang tag style. I'm going to go to File, Export, Export for Screens, and we're just going to export those out. Then when you're ready to share, make sure that you visit that link for our Illustrator Discord. This is what it's going to look like when you join. You want to go to this Daily Creative Challenge channel and the DCC feedback channel, and that is where you're going to find where your PNGs save, PNGs or JPEGs. You can just drag that into the Discord, right like that in the message, and say like challenge 5, and then just hit send, and it's going to share your work with everybody in the Discord. You can see all of the work everybody's doing these really cool recipe cards. Love this illustration of the fancy glass here from Nightwalker. Katarina's got some snowflakes. Mandy's got some snowflakes. Really awesome stuff everybody's been creating. It's been awesome to see. But thank you all for hanging out with me today for this Illustrator marketing challenge. We went over the pen tool, the curvature pen tool, the spiral tool. We went over print files, setting up print files. We went over blends, some type stuff. So we went over a lot of stuff today. We're live every day at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time at behance.net/Adobe Live, as well as our Adobe Live YouTube channel. So stay tuned right here for more live content after me. Bye, everyone!